Hello, everybody. Today's class is on local anesthetics. So we are going to learn this topic under the following headings. The first, we will be defining local anesthesia and listing out differences between the local and general anesthetics as an introduction. Then we'll come to the core area, that is classification of local anesthetics, the mechanism of action, actions and adverse effects of local anesthetics, then uses or the techniques of local anesthesia, and we'll briefly describe the individual anesthetics, mainly in the form of their important features. So, how do we define local anesthesia? So, the drugs which, upon topical application or local injection, cause reversible loss of sensory perception, especially of pain in a localized area of the body, are called as local anesthetics. So you have to remember these words, that they are causing only reversible loss of sensory perception, and they are usually applied topically or are locally injected. And how do they function, or how do they act? In one sentence, we can say that they block the generation and conduction of nerve impulses at a localized site of contact. So when we are going to learn about the mechanism of action of local anesthetics, you have to remember that the way by they are going to act is mainly by blocking the generation as well as the conduction of nerve impulses. So we'll be dealing about the mechanism of action in detail when we come to that section. Now, let us see the differences between local anesthesia and general anesthesia. So, in the case of local anesthesia, the site of action is mainly the peripheral nerves, whereas in the general anesthesia, it is the CNS. The area anesthetized in local anesthesia is a localized area, whereas in the case of general anesthesia, it is the whole body. And the person loses the consciousness when he's under general anesthesia, but the patient is conscious when he's under local anesthesia. General anesthesia is preferentially used for major surgeries, whereas the local anesthesia is mainly resorted for minor surgeries. Now, it is possible to use general anesthesia in non-cooperative patients because the patient is rendered unconscious during general anesthesia, but local anesthesia is very difficult to use in non-cooperative patients. Again, general anesthesia usually causes a lot of risk to the vital organs. So we have to be really careful when we are using general anesthesia in poor health patients, whereas the local anesthesia is relatively safer in poor health patients. Now, as I already told you, the care for vital functions is very important in the case of general anesthesia, but that is not much required in the case of local anesthesia. Now we come to the classification of local anesthetics. So they are mainly classified as injectable anesthetics and surface anesthetics. Injectable ones are the drugs which are injected into the local sites, and they can again be classified based on the potency and duration of action as low potency and short duration, the examples of which are procaine or chloroprocaine. Then comes the intermediate potency drugs like lidocaine, also called as lignocaine, and prilocaine. High potency, long duration ones, examples are tetracaine, bupivacaine, ropivacaine, and dibucaine. Under the surface anesthetics, we have got examples of soluble ones like cocaine, lidocaine, tetracaine, and benoxenate, while the insoluble ones are benzocaine, butyl aminobenzoate, and oxytocin. So you can see that lidocaine I have colored it in a different light because it is considered as a prototype drug of the local anesthetics, and it is an intermediate potency injectable one, and it is also available as surface anesthetics, and it is a soluble type of surface anesthetics. So when you see the uses of lidocaine, you will see its multiple uses where it is used as injectable as well as it is available as for surface applications. Now, there's another way of classifying local anesthetics that is based on their chemical structure. They can be classified as ester-linked anesthetics and amide-linked anesthetics. So there are some differences between ester-linked and amide-linked. The ester-linked anesthetics are short-acting, while the amide-linked ones are long-acting. The ester-linked, why they are short-acting is because they are metabolized in plasma and tissue fluids, whereas the longer-acting amide-linked anesthetics are metabolized in liver enzymes. When you look at the hypersensitivity reactions or the rate of adverse reactions, then you see that ester-linked anesthetics cause more hypersensitivity reactions as compared to the amide-linked anesthetics. Examples of ester-linked include procaine, tetracaine, benzocaine, and cocaine, whereas the amide-linked anesthetics include lidocaine, bupivacaine, dibucaine, and ropivacaine. A code for identification of amide-linked anesthetics is the presence of two I's, that is two letter I's in their name. Okay, that is how you usually identify the amide linked. Okay, that's just a code. It is not a scientific way of identifying. Scientific way is definitely by going by the chemical structure. Okay. Now, as I already mentioned, lignocaine or lidocaine is considered as the prototype drug of local anesthetics. And when I'm going to talk about local anesthetics, I'll be mainly referring as it as the mechanism of action of lignocaine. This is just because it is a prototype drug, but the mechanism of action of all the local anesthetics is the same. Okay, but we refer to lignocaine only because that is considered as the prototype of the class. Now, I already mentioned to you that mechanism by which the local anesthetics act is that they block generation and conduction of nerve impulses at a localized site of contact. Now, you've already learned, okay, about the action potential in your first year classes, and you know how a nerve impulse is conducted. So, you know that the entry of sodium is essential for the depolarization phase of action potential in a nerve. Now, what the local anesthetics do is that they block the entry of sodium and thus decrease the depolarization phase of the action potential, thus causing the slowing of conduction and finally the complete blockade of the nerve conduction. This we will understand in detail. And whenever you are describing the mechanism of action of local anesthetics, you do not stop at one line by saying they block generation and conduction of nerve impulses and they prevent the entry of sodium, but you have to explain the complete detail as I am going to do in the future, in the further slides. So I'll show you the sodium channels. Okay, so we'll have the understanding of the sodium channels in detail. So sodium channels, you can see they are available in three states: resting, activated, and inactivated states. If you see the structure of the sodium channel, you can see that it has an activation gate, the M gate, near its cellular mouth, and there's an inactivation gate that is present, it's called as the H gate, at its intracellular mouth. The receptor for local anesthetic is, you can see here, is actually located on the sodium channel on its intracellular part. In the resting state of the channel, the activation gate is closed, and when the action potential arrives, the activation gate opens, allowing the sodium to enter into the channel. Within a few milliseconds, the inactivation gate closes and the ion flow stops. Then the channel, so this is the inactivated state, and then the channel recovers to the resting state in a time-dependent manner. So what does the sodium, the local anesthetics do? The local anesthetic, it crosses the cell membrane in the unionized form. Okay, and in the axoplasm, it is ionized and the cationic form, that is, you can see here as mentioned as BH plus, the cationic form of the local anesthetic binds to the receptor of the sodium on the sodium channel. And we see that the cationic form of the local anesthetic binds to inactivated form of the sodium channel with greater affinity. Here you can see it is binding to the activated form, but the greater affinity is for the inactivated form of the sodium channel. So what happens is the sodium channel, it becomes stabilized in the inactivated form. There is no flow of the sodium that is occurring. So what we can say in brief is that the local anesthetic is trying to prolong the inactivated state of the sodium channel in which there is no flow of the sodium ions. This is the way you have to describe whenever you are describing the mechanism of action of the local anesthetic. You have to draw the diagram of the sodium channel, and then and the also the ionized and the ionized form of the local anesthetic, and how it is binding and stabilizing the sodium channel in the inactivated state. Now, what are the actions? So first, we'll describe the local actions of local anesthetic. So you know, we are blocking the sensory endings, nerve trunks, and neuromuscular junctions. So sensory and motor fibers are equally sensitive to local anesthetic. So whenever you inject it near a mixed nerve, you both get both anesthesia of the skin as well as the paralysis of the voluntary muscle. The sensitivity of a fiber depends on the diameter as well as the type of fiber. The smaller fibers are more sensitive to the action of the local anesthetic than the larger ones. And the myelinated fibers are blocked earlier than the non-myelinated ones. This is the reason why is because you know that the myelinated fiber, the transmission occurs mainly at the nodes of Ranvier. So it is like you can block the nodes of Ranvier and you can get a complete blockade. Whereas there is non-myelinated ones, the nerve impulse transmits along the entire length of the fiber. So the myelinated fibers are blocked easier than the non-myelinated ones because you just have to block the nodes of Ranvier located along the different junctions of the nerve. The autonomic fibers are more susceptible than somatic fibers to the action of the local anesthetics. And among the somatic fibers, the order of blockade is pain, temperature, touch, deep pressure sense. That is, the pain sensation will be lost, followed by temperature, touch, and deep pressure. So, if you have anesthetized the area of a person's body, and then if you apply a painful stimuli, he might have lost it, but he would still be able to sense the feeling, the sensation of a touch or deep pressure. That is like that is abolished as later than the pain sensation. Now, this is very important. This point that I'm going to discuss now is very important. That is the addition of a vasoconstrictor like adrenaline to local anesthetic. So we know that the actions of local anesthetic, that just I told you about the local action, and sometimes we add a vasoconstrictor like adrenaline to lignocaine because it has got some advantages. Now, what are the advantages? So when we add adrenaline, it prolongs the duration and intensity of action of local anesthetic. This is because the vasoconstrictor action of the adrenaline, there is a slow absorption of local anesthetic into the blood. So what happens is that there is a slow, since this entry is slow, the action is prolonged. Okay, and it also reduces systemic toxicity of the local anesthetic because there is slow absorption. So slow absorption is prolonging the action of the local anesthetic, as well as it is decreasing the systemic toxicity of the local anesthetic. Also, the injection of the addition of adrenaline to lignocaine provides a bloodless field for surgery because the adrenaline is a vasoconstrictor, so it will be giving a bloodless field and a clean field for surgery. At the same time, there are some disadvantages of addition of vasoconstrictor adrenaline to local anesthetic. One disadvantage is that it delays the wound healing and can cause necrosis of the skin. It might raise blood pressure in certain individuals, and adrenaline and lignocaine combination should be avoided to anesthetize areas with end arteries. For example, fingertips, toes, penis, and pinna. So, in these areas which I have mentioned now, you have to use only the plain lignocaine. You should never use a combination of lignocaine and adrenaline in those areas with end arteries. If the combination is used in these areas because of the excessive vasoconstriction that is occurring, there is the blood supply will be completely cut off, and since these do not have any collaterals, the gangrene will be formed in these areas. So in such sites, we always should be careful to use plain lignocaine and never use a combination of lignocaine and adrenaline. Now let us look at the systemic actions of local anesthetic. So on the CNS, it causes dose-related spectrum of effects. The early signs of toxicity are ringing in the ears, metallic taste, numbness around the lips, and later on there is CNS stimulation characterized by euphoria, restlessness, mental confusion, and convulsions, followed by CNS depression, and death is usually because of respiratory depression. On the CVS, at higher doses, it is a cardiac depressant. That it causes bradycardia, and it's also having an antiarrhythmic action. But some of the local anesthetics, like bupivacaine, are cardiotoxic. That is, they themselves can cause arrhythmias. So while lignocaine is antiarrhythmic, the bupivacaine is cardiotoxic and can cause arrhythmias. The local anesthetics usually cause hypotension because of the arteriolar dilation, but in this case situation, but cocaine is an exception for this case. The cocaine causes vasoconstriction and not vasodilation. Now, what are the adverse effects of the local anesthetics? So, first and foremost, the local tissue irritancy and necrosis, and hypersensitivity reactions like rashes, angioedema, contact sensitization. And I already told you that ester-linked anesthetics have more hypersensitivity reactions. Then, if there is a systemic absorption that is occurring, it will lead to CNS toxicity characterized by dizziness, auditory and visual disturbances, mental confusion, and convulsions. And if serious toxicity occurring, it is manifested in the form of bradycardia, hypotension, and arrhythmias. These are the adverse effects of the local anesthetics. Now, so far we have discussed the classification that is mainly of two types. And secondly, we discussed about the mechanism of action. We discussed about the local actions, and we discussed about we also discussed about the systemic actions and the adverse reactions. Now we will discuss about the uses. Okay, this can come as uses of anesthesia, or it can also be asked as techniques of local anesthesia in the question paper, and you have to write the same thing for both these questions. Okay, so first and foremost is the surface anesthesia. So as the name suggests, here we are applying the anesthesia on the skin or the mucous membrane in the form of creams and jellies. There is no injection here. So only the superficial layer is anesthetized, and here we are using this type of anesthesia is mainly used for anesthetizing eye. For example, during tonometry. Tonometry is using an instrument to measure the intraocular pressure of the eye. So when you keep a tonometer, you cannot keep it on the bare eye. You have to anesthetize the eye, and that is by a surface anesthetic. And that is the reason that for example, tetracaine, proparacaine, all these are the surface anesthetic that can be used in the eye before tonometry. Again, for painful lesions in the nose, ear, and throat, topical applications of local anesthetics are applied to these areas. Even local anesthetics are applied on the intact skin before ear piercing and tattooing. So here I am giving you some examples of surface anesthesia. So here this is taken from Essentials of Medical Pharmacology by K.D. Tripathi, and you can see here for the surface anesthesia of eye, you can use proparacaine, tetracaine, and when we are using it for tonometry. Then nose, here you can use lidocaine. Then for anesthetizing mouth and throat, mainly for painful lesions, benzocaine, lidocaine. Similarly, for intact skin, we have got something called as a eutectic mixture. Okay, now we'll see what is this eutectic mixture. So you have seen here for anesthetizing intact skin, we are using eutectic mixture. So I'll just tell you what is a eutectic mixture. So eutectic means it's two solid substances are mixed together in equal quantities by weight. The melting point of the mixture is lower than the melting points of the individual compounds. The lidocaine and prilocaine, two anesthetics, are mixed in equal proportion at 25 degrees centigrades to become an oily mixture. And this eutectic mixture is used to anesthetize intact skin. So this is mainly applied to prevent the pain associated with intravenous catheter insertion for blood sampling, then superficial surgical procedures, and topical anesthesia of leg ulcers for cleaning and debridement to numb the skin before tattooing and ear piercing. So here you're just applying that particular this ointment, and there is no injection. So this will reduce the pain for all these procedures that I have just mentioned. This is the eutectic mixture. application. Okay. Next is the infiltration anesthesia. Now here the injection technique is involved. Here the local anesthetic is infiltrated under the skin by subcutaneous injection, and so it will block all the sensory nerve endings that is in that particular subcutaneous tissue. This is used mainly in minor surgeries like incisions, hydrocele, the surgery of hernia, when area to anesthetize is small. And you can see here, I've just shown you, this is the lacerated bone, and you want to future this. So you will infiltrate the skin, the around this particular laceration like this. This you have already might have seen in the minority, and then the suturing is done. So the examples of local anesthetics used are lignocaine with or without adrenaline, depending upon the site that the procedure is done. Bupivacaine and ropivacaine are the other anesthetics that are used for infiltration anesthesia. Then comes the field block. Now, field block is the injection of local anesthetic subcutaneously so as to block all the nerve endings coming to a particular field. Now, it is used in the case of forearm, anterior abdominal wall, scalp, and lower extremity surgery. Again, the same anesthetics are also used for this technique: lidocaine, bupivacaine, and ropivacaine. Then comes something called as a nerve block. Now here what we are doing is we are trying to inject the local anesthetic around the nerve trunks or plexuses. So you have learned about a lot of nerve trunks and plexuses in your first year. So here the local anesthetic is injected in such a way that the area of anesthesia is large in comparison to the amount of the drug used. So if you know that if you inject it into the nerve trunk, then the area that is supplied by that particular nerve trunk will be anesthetized. So by this technique, a large area can be anesthetized with a small amount of the drug. For example, you can have trigeminal nerve blocks for anesthetizing the face. Here you can see the picture. Here the trigeminal nerve trunk, the drug is injected and it will anesthetize the face. Again, for anesthetizing the complete forehead, you are injecting into the supraorbital nerve plexus. So you don't have to like infiltrate into the complete skin in the subcutaneous tissue. You can just put it in the trunk, and the complete area that is supplied by that particular nerve plexus will be anesthetized. Again, the same anesthetic agents are used for nerve block also. Then comes the spinal anesthesia. The site of injection here is the subarachnoid space between L2 to L2 and L3 or L3 and L4. The site of action is the nerve roots in the cauda equina. And they are mainly used for anesthetizing lower limbs, pelvis, lower abdomen during prostatectomy, obstetric procedures like cesarean and cesarean section. Local anesthetics used are mainly lidocaine and tetracaine. Now, the complications of spinal anesthesia are many. Nausea, vomiting, hypertension, bradycardia, headache are the common complications. Respiratory paralysis is rare and it can occur because the paralysis of the intercostal muscle. Then again, there is something called as the cauda equina syndrome, which is the loss of bladder and the bowel control. And septic meningitis can occur if the aseptic measures are not followed during the procedure. So these complications of spinal anesthesia are also very important from the exam point of view. Now, what are the contraindications of spinal anesthesia? First and foremost is the patient refusal, local infection at the site of the puncture, severe hypovolemia or shock, coagulopathy or bleeding disorders, patients who are on anticoagulant therapy, patients with raised intracranial pressure due to some space-occupying lesion like a brain tumor, severe spinal deformities making the procedure difficult, and patients who are having severe sepsis or bacteremia. In such patients, it should not be given. Now, what is epidural anesthesia? The site of injection is mainly the spinal dural space. There are mainly three types of epidural anesthesia. First one is the thoracic, which is the anesthesia of the thoracic and the upper abdominal area. The lumbar anesthesia, that is the anesthesia of the lower abdomen, pelvis, and the lower limbs. The caudal, which is the anesthesia of pelvic and perineal region, mainly used during the vaginal delivery. The local anesthetics which are used here are mainly the lidocaine and bupivacaine. There are a lot of advantages of epidural anesthesia. That is, it produces good muscle relaxation for lower body surgeries. It can be used for long procedures. The post-operative analgesia also is there. There is less risk of hypotension compared to spinal anesthesia. It is safe in pregnancy and labor analgesia. and there is no respiratory depression if the dose of the drug is controlled. Disadvantages of epidural anesthesia: it is slower onset than spinal anesthesia. It is technically more difficult to perform. There is a risk of dural puncture leading to post-dural headache. There is sometimes the anesthesia is not complete and there's a patchy block. Needs larger dose of the local anesthetic. There is risk of infection if the aseptic measures are not followed. It can cause urinary retention, and there is rare risk of epidural hematoma or the nerve damage. This is the epidural anesthesia. Now, next one is the IV regional anesthesia, otherwise called as the Beer's block. Here, what we do is injection. The local anesthetic is injected in a vein of a tourniquet occluded limb, so that the drug diffuses backwards from the peripheral vascular beds to non-vascular tissues, including nerve endings. So, you can see here there is a here you can see here the anesthetics is here the limb is occluded, and here the anesthetic is injected, and once the anesthetic is injected, it is diffusing backwards from the peripheral vascular beds to non-vascular tissues, including the nerve. So what happens, this area complete is anesthetized by the back diffusion of the local anesthetic agent. Is mostly limited to upper limb anesthesia for orthopedic procedures, and the local anesthetics used are lidocaine, bupivacaine, and ropivacaine. Now let us look at the individual local anesthetics very briefly about the important features. So cocaine and procaine, they are not at all popular nowadays. Lignocaine, I told you, is the prototype drug, and it is having fast onset, and the effect lasts for 30 to 60 minutes. Bupivacaine has got a slower onset but longer duration of action, about 8 hours, and it is used for different techniques, that is infiltration, spinal, nerve block anesthesia, and epidural anesthesia. The main problem with it is that it is cardiotoxic and can cause arrhythmias. However, it is a preferred agent for epidural anesthesia during delivery. The reasons are, it has got a unique property of analgesia without significant motor blockade, which means that there won't be the patient's efforts for the delivery will not be interfered with. Means the patient will be still having the strength to push out the baby. Okay, that is it will provide the pain control, but the effort or the contractions or the limb strength for the mother to push out the baby is still maintained. It doesn't cross the placenta, so there is no unwanted effect on the fetus. Then there is a ropivacaine, which is a long-acting one, but less cardiotoxic than the bupivacaine. Bupivacaine is most potent but most toxic and the longest acting local anesthetic, and it is therefore used only for surface anesthesia because it is very toxic when it is injected. Benoxenate is used as a surface anesthetic. Benzocaine is used as lozenges for sore throat, ointments for ulcer, suppositories for rectal lesions, again as a surface anesthetic. Oxazane is also used for surface anesthesia, mainly for anesthetizing gastric mucosa, along with, and it is all usually available along with antacids. Okay, so if you sometimes come across the antacids, you can sometimes see the presence of oxetazine in those formulations. Now, the final slide, precautions while using local anesthetics. So, use minimum effective dose to avoid systemic toxicity. Aspirate before injection to make sure that there is no intravascular administration. Avoid injecting into inflamed or infected tissue. Do not use adrenaline in end artery areas like finger, toes, nose, penis and pinna because there is risk of gangrene. Maintain resuscitation equipment and emergency drugs ready in case toxicity occurs. Reduce the dose in children, elderly, debilitated, hepatic and cardiac disease patients. Be cautious in pregnancy and check for allergy history before administration of any anesthetic agent. For spinal or epidural use, ensure strict aseptic measures. That's all for the class. Thank you.